What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. This is Best Served Podcast 161. Be a Barrel Troll with Bess Dougherty of the Grateful Gnome, based in Denver. Bess, thank you for being on.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Clearly, we're talking craft beer today, but before that, Best Served Chilled. New channel. We're really focusing on kind of highlighting people within the beverage producing side and the beverage professional side of the industry. And Bess clearly is that. So Bess, before we get into kind of your story a little bit, the Grateful Gnome, what can people expect from your spot?
So the Grateful Gnome is a East Coast style deli with a full bar and brewery attached. The owner of the Gnome, his family actually ran a deli in Jersey for about 20 years back in the 80s. So it's essentially his family deli in Denver with the booze and seating because they were takeout only. So old school family stuff.
I dig it. All right, we're talking sandwiches. We're going to talk beer. Let's go back a little bit, though. Your journey into craft beer, where specifically did that start for you?
It really started when I answered a newspaper ad when I was 21 to work in a local liquor store that was opening up.
All right. When there were still newspaper ads for jobs.
And that's how I found a job because I'm old. It's fine. But yeah, it was actually a total beverage up in Westminster.
Okay, yeah.
And I started there as just part-time cashier and ended up working my way up. And through that job, discovered a deep love for craft beer. That was like back when liquor stores were still closed on Sundays. So a lot of Sundays we would schedule with various breweries around the state and take the whole staff on a field trip to do brewery tours and things like that. And I just really fell in love with the insane range of flavor profiles that you can get in beer, as well as the community.
Yes. What were some of the first beers that really like piqued your interest, that kind of made that aha moment for you?
One of the first big ones I bought because of the name, Avery's White Rascal. I was like, hey, that's me. But I had never had a beer so light in appearance that was so flavorful. And it just opened my mind to what potentially could be out there. Because before that, I was mostly a Guinness drinker. Yeah, I love Guinness. I still do.
I mean, that's solid. I think when I started drinking beer, I was drinking like Busch Light and stuff like that. Like horrible college kid in the Midwest.
There were definitely 30 racks of Key Light. But
hey, I knew it. I knew it. Shotgunning beers until you fall on the ground, and now our habit is a hobby. So I think it's great how it evolves. Okay, so the liquor store, that makes a ton of sense. It's the foray into it. Then brewing. When did you find your way into kind of the beer production side? Where and how did that come about?
So it started again shortly after I started at the liquor store and discovered these beer flavors. But then pretty soon there were flavors that I wanted to have in beer that I couldn't find on the shelves. So I started home brewing. Naturally, if you can't find it, make it.
Yes.
And then I really just discovered a passion and what friends and family told me, a talent for creating good, flavorful, balanced recipes. And then through that job, I got a trip to Belgium. It was like 8-day brewery tour trip.
Awesome.
And as soon as I got home, like my mom picked me up at the airport and I just started sobbing when she asked me how it was. Like, one, I hadn't slept in 24 hours because of international travel. But all I can remember is just sobbing and telling her, like, I need to figure out how to make beer for a living.
It changed everything for you.
Changed everything. And the whole theme of the trip was passion and passion behind brewing and community. And yes, and this is a way to combine my love of art and science, and I just need to figure it out. And mom being mom, she's like, well, first you need to go to bed and then let's tackle this. So I started asking a lot of the contacts I had made through the liquor store, like sales reps and brewers, like, what's the best way to go about this? I felt I came into the brewing world at a time where you could still potentially just show up and work for free and eventually get a job that way, the old school way.
Yep, just tossing kegs to begin with.
Yeah. And I felt like I wasn't super naive, and I knew that like being a young lady trying to get into the industry would be more difficult than if I was a white dude with a beard. So I decided to hedge my bets and got a lot of feedback between UC Davis and the Siebel Institute and kind of which one looks better on a resume from brewery owners and stuff. And I ended up going with Siebel because I could do the concise course in brewing technology online, so I could still live at home and work full time. And about the day after I started that online course, blog I used to write for, Denver Off the Wagon, were brewing our first anniversary collaboration at Wing Coop. And PJ, Mr. Panther Jones, told PJ Andy Brown.
Yes.
He told Andy Brown that morning that I had just like started in school and I was interested in this as a career path. And so throughout the day, Andy and I talked about it some more. And by the end of the day, he had offered like, if you want to just send me your syllabus week to week, I'll try and schedule things in the brewery that you can get hands-on experience with that on your days off from the liquor store. So like, that's why huge forever shout out to Andy, because like, no, did he have to do that? No, like I was ready and set to just hit up every brewery I knew to see if anyone would be willing to let me do a free internship essentially while I was going to school. And for him to just offer it right out of the gate was huge. And it was an exhausting few months of, you know, working 50, 60 hours at the liquor store and then spending my days off, you know, brewing and filling kegs and washing kegs and working on a canning line. And I was just so exhausted, but so happy. And about a month after my courses finished, I was still just popping in like once a week, brewing with them, just still gaining that experience while I looked for jobs and like was mentally preparing to have to move out of state potentially to get a job, which I was born and raised in Denver. I didn't want to, but I'm like, whatever it takes, I'm willing to do.
What a beer scene here to not be able to get a job. That had to be a little demoralizing.
Yeah, and like there were a lot of ton of breweries, but like the turnover rate for brewers really isn't that high either. Like people who are career brewers tend to love it and they know that's what they want to do with their life. So like the positions were out there, but like they aren't getting emptied that quickly. And so I'd applied for a couple like brewer's assistant positions, so just like staging grain and all that jazz.
Yeah. We forget now that brewers are so prolific, and there's 400 plus in Colorado, 100 in Denver Metro, that like a new one's popping up all the time. That wasn't necessarily the case a decade ago, even 7-8 years ago. It's been exponential, the growth. So I think it's important to like recognize that. And I love that you got a shout out.
All this was like 8 years ago too.
Yeah.
So
a lot changes
right
very
before
quickly.
a big boom.
I can't even believe that I didn't remember, like you and I both wrote for Denver Off the Wagon. I think there was like 8 writers. It was the first like 8 of us. I think mine was called like Liquid Diet or something, and it was basically just like every week we'd go to a restaurant and like write about it. So Betsy and I were like all over town, and I remember Sean, who's now Cerebral Brewing, was just like a photographer for Off the Wagon. I remember Nick Nunn's crew was around back then. Chris, that was quite a dynamic crew that went on to do good things,
amazing things in the industry.
I love hearing that. So Win Coop and Andy, huge shout out to Andy, C Squared Cider now, doing really, really great stuff there, connected to the Rack House, formerly connected to the Rack House, right?
They moved down south, got
and
a nice
they've
big
moved
farm
since.
now.
But doing great stuff. All right, so now you're applying for the jobs, and when do you get the break?
So I got the break actually. It was the day that Denver Off the Wagon was going to Vine Street to cover their brand new brewery. And I had spent the day brewing a batch of Color Rojo with Bradley and Min at Wing Coop. And at the end of the brew day, we're like sitting in the office having shifty. And like, all right, I got to get going, got to get to Vine Street. Getting across town at 5 p.m. is going to suck, but I'll hang out and have a beer because I love it here. And that's when Andy, he just kind of looked at me and was like, so are you still interested in like a job?
Hell yes.
Yeah, I just spent like 8 hours working for free here. And he just looked up at the calendar on the wall and picked a day 2 weeks from then and was like, here's when you're starting. I was like, all right, game on.
Amazing.
And yeah, I remember texting PJ like, I'm so sorry. I'm running a little bit late. I'm getting there as fast as I can. And when I got to Vine Street, I just had to have had the biggest shit-eating grin on my face because I walked in and PJ's like, you got the job, didn't you?
Damn right I did.
Hell yeah.
I am a professional brewer. Like you take for granted, like that was not easy. You had to schlep a lot of kegs, clean a lot of kegs. It's not glamorous. It's still, as a head brewer, not glamorous at all. I think we romanticize it, same as being a chef. I think though, like you get that job, like you broke through, and now you're in. Now you're part of the. Now you are a bearded white guy. So you know, you found your tribe. I think that's always what it is. Like you
definitely. Like I always joke about when I got into the brewing industry, I essentially gained like 50 older brothers. Like some of the old school guys that started taking care of me from the get-go were the boys from Cannonball Creek. Just, it was a place, I had a friend that worked in Golden, so her and I started visiting there and got to know the guys that way. And then we started like being at festivals with each other, and they just hands down will look out for me all the time. Like, because, you know, being a young lady at beer festivals, you can have some unpleasant experiences with
a lot of respect for that. It's a lot of machismo in the room for sure in that. And
so like having those boys have my back around every corner was just like, I got my tribe, I got my brothers.
Yeah. And Cannonball Creek makes unbelievably amazing beer, especially their IPA game. They're like super well balanced, low ABV IPA game is strong.
So good. Oh God. Everything they do. I love it.
Haven't they won a GABF medal, Great American Beer Festival medal, like every year of their existence? Something crazy like that. Yeah.
Yeah, at least one every year. And I think they've medaled every World Beer Cup they've entered to. It's just, and they are the most humble, down-to-earth dudes too. Like, you make some of the best beer in the world, like one of the best IPA breweries in the state. Like them and Comrade are my top two. And they just, you know, to them, it's just like, we get to hang out with our friends and make beer. And it's like, that's fucking rad, dude.
Yeah. And when you're in Golden, in the shadow of Coors Brewery, like, it can take a little bit to shake loose a little bit of attention. Now Golden's got, what, a dozen breweries or something? It's really blown up. For sure.
Yeah.
It's really great. All right. Now you're brewing. You're in it. Let's talk about kind of finding your way. I think as artists, you mentioned, you know, chefs, bartenders, brewers, winemakers, anything. I always think early on, you're like holding on too tight, trying too hard, like have something to prove, chip on your shoulder. Did you feel any of that being a woman in the boys club? Was there any of that for you, or was it just always finesse and you kind of found your rhythm really early? Talk about that dynamic.
I think for me, I didn't feel like I had to prove myself day to day at work with like the guys I worked with that trained me, and then more guys that came on after, like Brad and Josh left Wing Coop. They were all just so, I was just like any other coworker brewer to them. Great. Like it was a non-issue, like different jokes were made and stuff, but there was never a doubt that I couldn't do the job in any of them. So like that just gave me a huge like safety net confidence boost that I feel like if I had started at a different brewery with more toxic culture wouldn't have happened. And then when I first started, like my biggest main goal, because Wing Coop has been around for over 30 years and they were still packaging at that time. And these beers that had been around like longer than I've been legally allowed to drink, my main focus was making those beers and making them consistently and true to what the recipe showed that needs them to be. And kind of once I like got to the point where I was comfortable and like I feel Andy had that confidence in me because like almost every batch of rail yard, I was brewing it. And like I worked 4 10-hour shifts there. And for a few years, all 4 of those days, I was in charge of the brewing, not the cellar work. And like, so that felt good knowing that like he had faith in me to execute the recipes and create that consistency. And then at one point, it was for the Mardi Gras beer, but I was talking because I was still home brewing while I was brewing there, so I could like keep working on my own recipes. And there was one day where he just looked at me and was like, "Why are you home brewing? Like, this is your homebrew system now," and just gestured at the brewery. I was like, "Oh shit, okay, let's fucking go."
What was the first beer that you brewed, your own recipe?
So the first beer was like a chocolate forward Dunkelweiss. That was the Mardi Gras beer for that year, back when they used to do the parade from Wazee Street back to Wing Coop and just big party. So that was the first one. And one of my other, like my first one that I put in barrels was the Imperial Gingerbread Stout that I got to barrel age. And that one became like an every winter small batch.
Yep.
And then throughout the years, like after Andy had left Wing Coop, I ended up just kind of slowly transitioning and taking over the barrel aged beers. And at one point, like corporate kind of started noticing that. And when I was promoted to lead brewer, they actually, Lee Driscoll told me, like, we've been hearing rave reviews about the barrel aged beers you're doing. We think it's a really fun project. We want you to keep going. And essentially gave me a blank check to just redo the barrel program. And that's kind of where the Barrel Troll name came from, because I started, by the time I left, I had tripled the amount of barrels that Wing Coop had. And all the barrel aging took place in the basement in this like dark, cavey kind of room. So it just made sense. Like,
well suited for beer barrels, maybe less so for humans. So you took on the moniker of the Barrel Troll.
Yep.
I like that. When I saw your titles of multiple places, you've taken the Barrel Troll title onto the Grateful Gnome. It's like, yeah, sometimes you're just down and dirty and grimy, like in the basement with the barrels, you know, talking to them like they're people, because inside is gold. I think I'm fascinated in that dynamic.
Yeah, and legit, my system of tracking the barrels at Wing Coop was naming them. So, like, some places number them, I name them, and like each set, I usually got 6 barrels at a time because that fits 10-barrel batch of beer in about 6 barrels pretty well. And so I just picked different themes to name them. Like one was existential philosophers, and one was like civil rights activists from the 50s. And then one time I got 2 Cabernet Sauvignon barrels, and there's only 2 of them. So like Amy and Tina, because those are some of my favorite lady comedians, you know?
Is perfect. They have personality. It's so funny. And then the beer comes out and the beer mimics that personality. You're like, nailed it. Perfect name for that barrel. All right, let's talk about the Grateful Gnome a little bit more. What kind of your expectation of beer there? Somebody comes in, they're getting this New Jersey style deli sandwich. They got beers on tap there. What are you expecting from the beer side of that experience for a guest?
So my most common go-to when describing the beers I'm making at the Gnome is just beer flavored beer. And that dirty
That's my favorite flavor
balance.
of beer.
Yeah. So I tend to, like I said, at Wing Coop, I got to do all the crazy stuff I wanted. And coming to the Gnome, it was kind of a chance to rebrand my brewing philosophy, if you will. And I just have such an appreciation for clean, classic, simple beers. And like, what pairs better with sandwiches than like a 4.5% crushable, super dry blonde ale, you know, like things like that. So I just focused on classic, simple beers that about half of the beers we normally have on draft are below 5%. So you can sit and have a few and still be coherent. And yeah, I think I've used adjuncts in 2 of my beers,
Wow.
and the biggest complaint I've had about those, like tangerine wheat, which I just retapped for this summer, some American style wheat beer with tangerine puree. And the biggest complaint last summer when we had that beer on was that it still tastes too much like beer. Well, it's because I'm making fruit beers the way I want them, to where the fruit is a complement to the other ingredients,
Right. An
not
accent
overpowered.
versus smack you in the face.
Exactly.
Yeah. I
Um,
like that. I like that as a brewer who's got a great name in the industry, locally, nationally, right? That it'd be easy for you to want to be the star and for you to let the beers humbly speak for themselves. And moreover, for them to be kind of an amplifier for these kick-ass New Jersey style deli sandwiches that shows a lot of composure and restraint and like finesse and focus and these things that brewers aren't necessarily always known for. Kind of where do you find that level of just confidence and cool factor to just be able to put out beer flavored beer on style, no off flavors, straightforward, damn good beer?
I mean, honestly, I think it's from I just quit giving a fuck.
Yeah, there we
Like,
go. It's always the answer.
yeah. Like especially as I get older in so many aspects of my life, I'm confident in what I want out of my life, and whether that's beer flavored beer, like what kind of style and clothes I'm gonna wear, like I just don't care what other people think that much anymore. It's like I don't care about the hype trains. I care about like our local neighborhood consumers.
Yeah.
And, it's not, if people want certain styles of beer, especially on Tennyson, we have 5 breweries and 6 blocks. Like it's easy for us to say, like, oh, you're looking for some hazies, go check out Flight Co. and like
Yep.
Loggers. You got Call to Arms and Emporium, both doing beautiful things. The big crazy barrel aged stuff, Destige's got that all day. So like I don't need to try and do everything. I can do what I want and what I feel is best for our business model with the food aspect of it. And just that's what we're going to do. And like
Smart.
when we had our first staff training right before we opened, like I talked about all this in my brewing philosophy with the staff. And it's like, there are 3 things you will never see me brew. It's a hazy IPA, pumpkin beer, and beer with meat products. I'm just done. And I don't have to, so I'm not going to.
So that's a pretty good trifecta of things to just stay focused away from. I think that's super interesting. I like how you're really focused on the neighborhood as well. I think that's a really, really smart perspective. And honestly, the way that traffic works, I do this all the time. I'm just going to go to the Highlands and we'll figure out where to eat or drink later because I just know that there is 2, 3, 7, 10, 12 amazing places. And we just put ourselves on that path. Tennyson, same kind of thing. Those neighborhoods where you're just like, let's just go down to Tennyson and we'll figure out where we want to eat or drink afterwards. If you create a strong neighborhood and community there, all of you are going to benefit from that. And you're going to be able to, like, the fact that you would send somebody to another brewery seems like, no, make them drink more beer here. It's like, no. Have them always come to Tennyson for the best possible experience. I think it's such a smart way to go about it. You do a lot of collaboration beers, right?
Yeah.
And this is where this came about. A lot of collaboration beers. Too many? Maybe too many. It's a lot, right?
I don't think so.
And we talked to Calissa, who's on the show from Gold Spot. Amazing brewer as well. And she's the one that gave you the acknowledgement and said, got to talk to Bess. I said, absolutely. So again, we keep that going where most of the people on this show have been acknowledged and recommended by somebody else. She talked about how the focus is they're making so many collaboration beers because it's an opportunity to siphon. I think I maybe said siphon superpowers, but really that's like what you're doing is like, she's like, I'm using it for education too, an opportunity to meet with my friends, to collaborate, to make delicious beer. But I'm learning something because she's got a very specific style and somebody else might have a different style. You know, she doing really great dry IPAs. Her dry IPA game is strong. And, you know, for you are doing these very focused, clean styles, German styles that maybe she isn't and gets the opportunity. So what do you get out of a collaboration? Why are those important to you?
Well, I 100% agree with Calissa that I don't know that I've yet to have a collaboration, and I've like you said, I've done a lot in my day. But there's always something you can learn, and it could be something like ingredient wise, or even just a different way to store your parts, little things like that. Just looking around, being in another environment, seeing like, oh, I like the way they have their tri-clamps organized better than I do. So
I was just going to say, it always comes down to clamps with brewers. There's always a conversation during a collaboration beer about clamps. You guys are obsessed with clamps.
We love that.
It is absolutely a thing. Making noise. Tell people about making noise.
So Making Noise was a project that Calissa and I started after the 2016 election.
What happened in that election?
Well, our country took a dark turn, as we're seeing quite a lot now. But there was a lot of depression and anger and anxiety about what that meant for our communities, like both of us being female and queer, and people of colors communities and immigrant communities, like what this could potentially mean for anyone who's not a white dude, essentially. And after taking a little bit of time to process and figure it out, and her and I just talking more and more, we decided, instead of like, we took our time to, like, I didn't leave my house for about 3 days after that. I just shut my phone off. We took that time to, let yourself be sad, let yourself be angry, but then figure out how you can create positive change. So we decided to use our art form, which is brewing, to create positive change and use beer as a fundraiser for nonprofits that help those targeted communities. And the response, like, I threw out a Facebook post just saying, hey, Calissa and I are going to make this beer if anyone wants to join us. And it blew up so big that we had, I think the first round, we had about 7 breweries participate, all making their own batch beer. We had multiple bars reach out about doing tap takeovers. I know, like, that first release, nearly every brewery that participated, it was like their busiest record-setting sales day. So
I remember it was viral on top of viral.
Yeah.
Whatever, like,
I was cheers all day.
There was so much energy around it. And what was the first beer that you brewed?
Oh, good Lord. I don't even remember.
Yeah. I was trying to remember too. But I remember, it was all over the Denver market. Everybody who's got a voice within the craft beer community, restaurant, bars, tap houses, was talking about it, was serving it, was drinking it. So I think it was really, really important. How many have you done?
We've done 9
okay.
volumes now, because we were attempting to do every quarter, but between me actually being able to get the Gnome open, because this project started when we were under construction, between myself and going through that, and Calissa taking on ownership role at Gold Spot during that time, like, we both just got so busy, and running the project is more than a full-time job.
Yeah.
And we had a good team of volunteers, but like, it just physically, we couldn't keep doing it at the pace we wanted to do it at, and execute it to the level that we wanted it. So we had to take a step back and just reevaluate. And we've done a couple releases for, like, the anniversary of the inauguration is the big one that we try and get it out for every year. But yeah, altogether, I have my spreadsheets somewhere, but I love spreadsheets.
It's a great, like, to geek out on some Excel. It's a great project. I think anybody and everybody, check out Making Noise. Not only if you're in market and can get to the beer or be a part of the brewing, I think it's a really good model for other communities, other markets, other cities, other states, to look at and say, this is a way to really galvanize your community and use your voice through craft beer. And I think it's a powerful message. And so I definitely think that anybody out there who's in a position to be able to kind of siphon some superpower from Bess and Calissa and Making Noise, I highly, highly recommend it. Want to take just a minute real quick and buzz through a couple more people because you were so gracious. Already we've shouted out quite a few people. You threw some other people up here that I want to make sure and touch on. We'll throw these up here. So Ashley at Bierstadt, what a legend when it comes to brewing. Really on style. I mean, let's just say best German style brewery in the country.
Hands down.
Say that easily. So and Mitch and Ryan Barrels and Bottles. What does it mean to have this community of brewers that you can kind of lean on, that's, you know, you look up to, that your peers and also your mentors simultaneously? I think it's a cool dynamic.
Yeah, it's so insane and overwhelming. Like when I was first getting into beer, like trying to find females to look up to in the industry, and really it was like Ashley Carter and Lindsay Cornish, who at the time was at Odell's, and it's so amazing to me because one of my first like projects I knew I was going to do at Wingcoop was I wanted to host a female brewer collaboration. Like Steve Karowski was with the Brewers Guild at that time, and he helped me get in contact with any ladies he could find, and with the Brewers in Denver Metro and 2 ladies who worked in the lab at Avery. There were 8 of us. This again 8 years ago, and now like the last Pink Boots Brew Day at Blue Moon, there was over 60 industry ladies there, and
from 8 to 60.
Yeah,
and even that is not a lot. If we said the numbers of actual breweries there are,
but on that same like Pink Boots Brew Day, there were like 6 other breweries in Denver hosting collaborations too. So you have to pick and choose which ones to go to now. But like that day, that first collab, I really cemented these lifelong friendships with every lady there. And we just bonded at such an extreme level. And like, I love that these ladies who I looked up to, who I starstruck the first time I met them, are friends of mine. Like me, Ashley, Calissa, and Alyssa try and meet up regularly for beers, and like our Lady Brewer Girl Gang. And, you know, and I think
matching tattoos are coming soon. I can feel it.
They got them when I was at the Honey Beer Summit, so I still have to get mine. But
good enough. All right, very last thing. Great conversation, by the way. Very last thing, the must-have beer and sandwich pairing. The one. If you're coming to Grateful Gnome, you're getting the one. What is the beer and sandwich pairing that's the go-to for you? It's like asking your favorite child. I get it.
I know.
You got to give us one.
Hard. Can I give 2?
All right, I'll let you with 2.
One hot sandwich, one cold sandwich. Okay.
Nice. Well played. Okay.
Yeah. So the cold sandwich is just the classic number 10 Italian ham salami, capicola, provolone, with whatever toppings you want on it. I personally do like lettuce, onion, oil, vinegar, and that one. I think with the tangerine wheat that just came out, like that little bit of fruitiness just cuts through all that salt so nicely. And then hot side, I would say the Reuben with a pint of BSP.
Yes. Oh yeah. Corned beef, sauerkraut with that little bit of like super malty and just touch of bitterness. I'm into it. Yeah. You know me, beer and food is my thing. I love it. I really appreciate the conversation. I'm so excited for, you know, you guys had your 2-year anniversary of the Grateful Gnome, and having been there, awesome sandwiches and beer, and just like it's just vibe. It feels really, really good to just have a sandwich and kick back with the beer. So thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
All right, Bess, you have a great day. Cheers.
Hey, cheers.
All right, Bess Dougherty, Grateful Gnome, the Tennyson neighborhood of Denver, Colorado. And again, there's quite a few breweries. So if you're up there, you know. And you know what? I want to be a barrel troll. I think that sounds amazing. Naming your barrels sounds a little weird and awesome at the same time. I'm super, super into it. So great episode of Best Served Chilled, again, where we're going to be focusing on beverage producers and beverage professionals. So you're going to see brewers, winemakers, distillers, bartenders, cicerones, sommeliers, the whole gang will be here. We're going to talk beverages on this channel. So really appreciate you guys as always. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Cheers.